These past couple weeks, we have also begun our big unit on decimals. In 5th grade, we do a lot of different stuff with decimals, and we are beginning with the basics. So the first thing we want to focus on with decimals is the place value. So if I write this decimal, the first thing I want to realize is any number after the decimal point is going to have place value. And the place value continues very similarly to a normal place value in a normal whole number. So there is no ones place after the decimal, but after the decimal we have the tenths place, then we have the hundredths place. Notice how there's a TH at the end of this. And then we have the thousandths place. Okay, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. And then as you add these numbers or add more digits to your decimal, you keep going. So you have 10,000ths, 100,000ths, millionths, and then you would just keep going on just like regular place value. Now it's important to be able to read different decimals and pronounce them based on their place value. So for example, if I have these 3 examples, what you want to focus on is basically you want to just read the number and you want to focus on how many digits are after the decimal point. So in this example, I have 1 digit after the decimal point. Well, I know that 1 digit after my decimal point is my tenths place. So I know that this answer is going to be called something tenths. This one has 2 digits after the decimal point. So I know this would be hundredths. And then this last one, I have 3 digits after the decimal point. 3 digits would be the thousandths place. So I know this would be something thousandths. You would just read the number and then follow up with the place value. So this would be 4 tenths, 59 hundredths, 673 thousandths. And it really is just that simple. Now, the only thing that might get a little bit tricky about it is when you have smaller values in larger place values. So what I mean by that is, for example, we had this example, and this was 4 tenths. So what happens when you throw an extra 0 in there? Well, simply all you have to do is focus on that place value. I have 2 digits after this decimal point. 2 digits would be hundredths. So this answer has to be hundredths. And I'm simply just going to read the number as normal. If I looked at this number, I would just see the number 4. And then since there are 2 digits, this would be 4 hundredths. Okay? Another example, another weird looking one, would be this one, 0.013. I have 3 digits after the decimal. That means I should be in the 3 thousandths place. And then I would just read the number, 13 thousandths. Okay? Not too tricky. Now, sometimes, actually a lot of the time, we are going to have a whole number in front of the decimal. Now, it's very important that we get the right language in 5th grade, because I know as adults and throughout your life, you're going to get used to saying the decimal as point, 38.72. But in 5th grade, as we're trying to understand the value and what everything means, it's important to use the right language. So we would read this number as 38. You would just read the normal number, 38, and. When we read a decimal point, we want to say and, because we want to remember that these are my whole numbers and these are my decimals. So 38 and then 72 hundredths. 38 and 72 hundredths. Now, another thing that we learned this week that'll be on our quiz is comparing decimals. So for example, if we have 396 thousandths and we want to compare that to 398 thousandths. Now, your child has done comparing in 3rd and 4th grade. It's not a new concept, but with decimals it is. So when you're comparing 2 numbers, what I like to do is I like to line them up, make sure the decimal places are lined up, and I like to put them on top of each other so I can see very closely what might be different. One thing you can do is you can start all the way to the left and you can keep going until you see a difference. Now, for example, 3 and 3, they match. 9 and 9, they match. 8 and 6 are different. So now I just simply need to figure out which one of these is greater. Obviously the 8 is greater, which tells me this number, 398 thousandths, is greater than 396 thousandths. Now it might get a little trickier because the decimals aren't always going to have the same exact amount of digits after the decimal. So for example, 7/10, and let's compare that to 693 thousandths. Now, a lot of people are going to look at this and right away they're going to say, okay, this number is way bigger. I bet that's the greater answer. But if you look a little bit closely, if we line these up, these zeros are the same. Oh, 7 and 6 are different. Okay, so right away, this number is actually greater. Another strategy you can use is at the end of any decimal, if you would like to, if it helps you, you can always add zeros. So I'm going to add 2 zeros to make these line up and have the same number of digits. Now, adding zeros to the end of any decimal is not going to change its value. It's just going to change how you would write it. So now I can look at these numbers and I can say, I pretty much have 700 and I have 693. I can clearly see that 700 is the greater number. Now, last but not least, another decimal concept that we are learning in these first couple weeks that is actually pretty simple is adding and subtracting decimals. So when we add and subtract decimals, the first thing we want to do is rewrite the problem. And again, we want to make sure the decimal points are lined up. If these decimal points are not lined up, it will lead to mistakes and it'll be 100% wrong in the end. So after I line the decimal points up, I'm just going to rewrite the problem. 24.6, 21, and 38 hundredths. Okay? Now, when I'm subtracting this, it looks a little bit weird because I have a big blank spot and there's nothing to subtract. So what I can do again, and if you remember from earlier in this video, if I need to, I can always add a 0 at the end to make this number have the same number of digits. After you do those 2 steps, lining up the decimals and then adding zeros if you need, it's just simple addition or subtraction. So I borrow, change this, bring the decimal point down exactly in the same spot, and then my answer is 3 and 22 hundredths.